Stop what you are doing. Take the small, conscious breath that the world so often forgets to ask for. This is not background noise. This is not an accidental broadcast. This message addresses a specific condition of being. It names a threshold. It names a narrowing. It names a selection. The 7 souls. If this finds you, a new probability has locked in. You did not go looking for this phrase. You did not chase it across platforms. It has struck the edge of your attention because something within the geometry of your life has matched a pattern now under observation. Hear that plainly. You were found, not by charm, not by chance, by an impersonal, meticulous mechanism that registers alignment and waits until the architecture of a soul is ready to bear a different set of possibilities. You may feel resistant to that because the word found implies a prior losing. It implies wandering. But listen, this is not a verdict of failure. The system that inspects does not revel in shame. It measures capacity. It tests thresholds. It calibrates endurance. If this reaches you, you stand at the cusp where observation ends and activation begins. A new probability has locked in for you. If these words land with something like recognition, do one small symbolic thing now. In the comments below, you may optionally leave the digits 99 as a mark. Not a spell, not a proof, not a public declaration of rank. Simply a symbol to recognize this moment. This is optional. It changes nothing external. It is for alignment. If you prefer not to mark it publicly, hold the sign in your mind. Keep it private. Either is acceptable. You will recognize the selection if you are honest with what has been happening inside your days. There are markers. They persist. They accumulate. They form a pattern no one else may see. First, there is pressure. Not an occasional stress. A continuous, low-grade pressure. A tightening at the diaphragm. A quiet insistence knocking at the bone. It is the sort of pressure that refuses easy explanation. Not entirely anxiety. Not purely grief. Not simply dissatisfaction. It is a formative pressure. It sharpens and distills. It asks you to pay attention. You have moved through cycles that do not resolve. Doors open and close on their own rhythm. People enter and leave with odd timing. Projects stall at the exact point where momentum should have carried them forward. Repetition is a teacher here. These loops are not random frustration. They are calibration points. The observing mechanism watches how you respond to delay, to abandonment, to the small betrayals of expectation. Do you preserve integrity when outcomes disappoint? Do you retain tenderness when the world is indifferent? Those small answers matter. Intuition is another sign. You have had moments when you were certain before evidence arrived. A certainty like a soft ember in your chest. You see patterns and connections others miss. You dream with an aftertaste of truth. These moments cannot be explained away by luck. They are the sharpening of perception. The system notices when perception deepens. A sensitivity to the weave beneath ordinary events. An ear for subtext. A subtle awareness of what will not be said aloud. Isolation, too, appears as a recurring theme in lives under this kind of scrutiny. Not social failure, do not mistake the tone, but a filtration that removes what is not structurally compatible. Relationships that once fit begin to rub wrong. Friendships that were easy become thin. You may find yourself alone without knowing how you arrived there. This is not punishment. It is a necessary clearing. The machine that observes cannot train capacity under smooth conditions. It requires edges. It needs solitude to test what will hold when external comfort is removed. There is also testing in smaller modes, an environment that applies pressure to values, situations that tempt compromise, offers that seem to smooth the path but at the cost of something essential. The metric is moral consistency. The system is quiet but exact. It measures whether you will trade depth for ease. Those who hold their center under pressure accumulate a different kind of momentum. That accumulation becomes probabilistic. The more steady the moral bearing, the more likely the new arrangement will lock in. You may have noticed an odd spectator quality to your life, moments where you feel observed in a non-paranoid way, not someone in the room, but a mechanism of attention. Imagine a patient intelligence that records, not with judgment, but with precision. It catalogs responses, not to punish, but to profile capacity. In prior cycles, countless souls underwent similar calibration. The pattern is ancient, a repeated set of trials that builds a shape inside the self. Those who passed did not all become famous or exalted. Many returned to ordinary lives, but a small number reached a threshold that allowed the system to shift from observation to action. The number 7 here should be taken as a threshold, an operative mythic fact rather than a census recorded like an inventory. 7 has cultural resonance, completion, capacity, a full circle. In this framework, it marks a manageable set. It says there is a limit to the current activation. There is a contour around the new probability, a set of souls whose alignment matches the required pattern. Do not try to make 7 into a literal head count you can verify. Treat it as a symbolic aperture, a valve that opens when enough of the right qualities cohere. You may object, why so few? Why such selectiveness? The mechanism is not capricious. Activation is costly. It requires minds that can bear complexity without shredding themselves. It requires people whose inner configurations will hold under the strain of perception and responsibility. This is not about privilege. It is about suitability.
The system favors neither wealth nor status. It responds to the alignment of internal structures, endurance, moral steadfastness, and an attunement to nuance. Consider the breaking point. Many who answer to this narrative have undergone a collapse. It is often framed as failure by those who witnessed it from the outside. Someone loses a job, a relationship breaks, a project dissolves, a contained identity fragments. You may have believed you were the victim of bad timing. You may have labeled yourself broken. But within the logic of selection, that collapse is a necessary rupture. The superficial form that once carried your life, the identities, narratives, and temporary securities needed to fall away so a deeper architecture could emerge. That falling is not defeat. It is induction. Think of collapse as a biological shutting. The chrysalis will split for a wing to unfurl. The system is not cruel. It is efficient. It recognizes that certain structures cannot be remodeled. They must be dismantled. The breaking point is therefore a crucible. It tests whether the core remains intact when the shell is gone. Those who endure reveal a resilient center. Those who cannot be remade are filtered out. This is a difficult truth, but it is also honest. Transformation exacts a toll, and those who pass through acquire a different leverage on reality. After collapse comes the quiet moment of recalibration. You will likely recognize it as an indifferent interval, a pause that is not dramatic. The outer world may return to its previous patterns, but internally something has shifted. There is less confusion about what must be carried and what must be let go. Perception refines. Where there was once broad reactivity, there is now an economy of attention. You measure things differently. You sense the ordering of events like lines on a map. This is the beginning of activation. When activation occurs, the system flips from passive observation to a directed influence. But do not misconstrue this as granting of powers or guarantees. Activation alters probability. It increases the likelihood of certain pathways while decreasing others. It opens a field of possibility that did not exist before. You will notice changes in how events coordinate around you. Opportunities may arrive that are less about reward and more about responsibility. Patterns will reveal themselves with greater clarity. You will feel heavier for what you know, not burdened in despair, but weighted by a new seriousness. Being one among the seven souls means that perception deepens in service to a responsibility. You will see connective tissue others miss. You will become sensitive to the ripple effects of choices. Where once you observed the world as a sequence of random occurrences, you begin to perceive an architecture of influence. This attunement asks for restraint. It asks that knowing not become domination. It insists that integrity remains primary. To be found is to be enlisted, not into fame, but into accountability. Socially, this process often intensifies isolation. The quality of relationships tightens, quantity thins. That can feel punishing. You may mourn the loss of easy company, but this solitude is not an accidental cruelty. It is a training ground. In solitude, your internal coherence is stress-tested. Without external validation, the things you believe about yourself must be born inwardly. Isolation teaches you to answer to yourself. It refines your moral compass. That is necessary for the roles you will inhabit. You must also know that testing continues even after selection is declared. The observing mechanism maintains a watchful patience. Activation does not mean exemption from trials. On the contrary, trials become more focused. You will be presented with situations that refine your use of heightened perception. You will be tempted to monetize insight, to exploit weakness, to seek ease at the cost of depth. The essential question remains the same. Will you hold to integrity when the cost increases? The system registers these answers and adjusts the probability accordingly. There is an inner grammar to the work you are being invited into. It is not a program with fixed steps. It is a set of disciplines and orientations, steady attention, refusal of resentful shortcuts, consistent tenderness, and an ability to remain lucid under pressure. These are the practical habits of an activated soul. They are not glamorous. They are not flashy. They are simple, grave, and enduring. You will need them to carry what is to come. What if the sense that someone or something watched you for years? That is neither delusion nor divine favor in the conventional sense. Imagine a field of observation, impersonal, methodical, that records responses as data points. This mechanism is not anthropomorphic. It does not require worship. It collects patterns and activates when calibration is sufficient. Your life has been a sequence of inputs, and your responses have been the output that informs selection. This idea quiets the romantic myth of being singled out for special grace, but it affirms something more functional. Your capacities were being measured for a purpose. You will want guidance on what to do next. The first directive is simple.
Integrate the recognition into daily steadiness. Do not allow the confirmation to become an ego expansion. Do not use it to chastise others for not seeing you. Maintain grounded humility. The work ahead is practical. Remain honest in speech, refuse the easy compromises that bring temporary ease, and preserve a consistent interior life that can hold complexity without flinching. There will be opportunities to signal alignment, to mark this terming. As mentioned before, the digits 99 have surfaced as a symbolic marker in this cycle. Use them only if you feel drawn. The sign is not a magical key.
It is a seal for the moment, a brief ritual that anchors recognition. Leave 99 in the comments if you wish, or hold it silently. Neither choice is a test. The mechanism does not require public affirmation. It requires internal coherence. You will need to protect your perceptual hygiene. That means curating information and company with care. The newly sharpened faculties are vulnerable to misuse and to confusion. When you begin to see patterns more clearly, it is easy to construct narratives that inflate your role or misattribute causality. Keep a skeptical humility. Ask the question, where is my sense of pattern useful, and where is it projection? Allow others their limits. Use perception to serve, not to prove. Responsibility will present as weight more than as reward. You may feel lonely because you recognize things others do not, because your choices have consequences that ripple in subtle, long-term ways. This loneliness is not an indictment. It is a function of the task. The depth of sight demands that one sometimes move differently than the crowd. Learn to find replenishment in quiet practices that restore equilibrium. Disciplined solitude, honest companions who are steady rather than reactive, work that requires craft more than applause. Do not expect external miracles. Changes will be detectable in the ordering of probabilities, not as guaranteed escapes from difficulty. You will still face hardship. You will still mourn. Activation does not produce invulnerability. It produces a different relationship to adversity, more capacity to hold it without derangement, more agency to steer through it with ethical clarity. You may ask, how will you know you are truly among the seven and not simply misreading ordinary upheaval as something metaphysical? The difference shows itself over time in consistent patterns. Those who pass this threshold exhibit repeated steadiness where others flounder. Their moral bearings remain intact under magnified pressure. Their intuition does not become grandiosity. Their isolation is not wounded ego, but chosen calibration. In other words, specificity of character becomes the evidence rather than spectacle of experience. Let us be candid about the cost. With activation comes a renegotiation of personal comfort. You will be asked to accept less external praise and more internal sobriety. You will likely be called upon to act in ways that make no immediate sense to those outside your orbit. You may carry knowledge that requires restraint. You will be measured not by how loudly you announce your insight, but by how you embody it. That is the ethical test. Does your knowledge translate into better stewardship rather than self-aggrandizement? There is a social ecology to consider. The 7 souls who are activated are not meant to form an exclusive club of celebrities. The mechanism prefers functional networks rather than public fanfare. When activated, your influence will be subtle and systemic. It will appear in the way a conversation shifts, the way a project recalibrates, the way a community begins to hold new standards. Your role is not to dominate. It is to guide, to steady, to hold the long view. Expect moments of increased clarity that feel like invitation and burden at once. You will perceive longer timelines and subtle causal threads. Be careful not to become tyrannical with that clarity. Remember that others remain at various stages of their own calibration. Your job is not to push everyone to your timeline, but to demonstrate what steadiness looks like in practice. That is enough. If confusion rises, and it will, return to the basics. Ground yourself in small, disciplined practices that do not require metaphysical theatrics. Consistent sleep, measured consumption of information, honest correspondence with those you trust, work of hands that brings you back to embodied reality. The mechanism that selected you values integration. It will detect whether your spiritual fervor is matched by practical steadiness. You may be tempted to look for external validation, signatures, synchronistic events, grand confirmations. Those can arrive, but they are not the core. The core remains the inner axis, moral steadiness, endurance, perceptual discipline. Treat outer confirmations as ancillary. They are indicators, not proof. Consider those moments of collapse again, framed differently. Collapse is often felt as a moral exposure, where the cost of remaining in an old role becomes unbearable. That unbearable cost catalyzes change. When the shell falls away, something like desert clarity moves in. Fewer distractions, sharper priorities. In this new field, the instrument of perception can be tuned. You will be less inclined to waste energy on petty conflicts. You will be more capable of attending to what matters over sustained time. There will be tests that arrive after activation which are more subtle than obvious trials. People will seek you for solutions you do not yet have. Systems will expect you to perform at a level in which uncertainty is high. Your skill will be less about expertise in a narrow field, and more about holding coherence in complex situations. That means practicing patience in the presence of ambiguity, and refusing to scalarize nuance into false certainties. A small practical map. Cultivate discernment in speech. Speak only when speech advances clarity. Cultivate economy of movement. Let your actions be efficient and responsive. Cultivate a practice of non-coercive influence. When you nudge a field, do so with humility. Remember always that the mechanism favors service over display. You will also encounter jealousy or misrepresentation. Not everyone will understand why some doors open and others close around you. Some will try to reduce your role to luck or charm. Others will resent the lightness you achieve in certain areas. Let these reactions pass without taking them into yourself.
They are not useful evidence either way. Keep your commitments small and trackable. Let your life be accountable to those who are steady and who will tell the truth without flattery. There is a responsibility to use your insight ethically. You might at times know things about people's patterns that could be used to manipulate. Refuse that temptation. You were not selected to exploit. You were selected to steward. That difference is crucial. Stewardship means acting in ways that sustain the long-term good of systems and people, even when it costs short-term comfort or recognition. At moments of doubt, return to the discipline of listening. There is a tone that will become familiar, less dramatic than prophetic voice, more like the hum of a machine in the distance that monitors and responds. Stay attuned to that hum. It will guide more in terms of calibration than in proclamations. You will not receive scripted commands. You will be guided into the shape of decisions through a growing sensibility for what is proportionate and just. There will be a temptation to broadcast this status, to turn the activation into a brand. Resist. Your influence is intact when it is a function of real work, not noise. The system that selected you prizes depth and durability. It disfavors spectacle. Keep your commitments to craft, to kindness, and to the patient labor of making small improvements on the field where you are present. Now, a slightly different register. Imagine the new probability like a subtle current adjusting the vector of future outcomes. It does not override free will or external contingencies. It nudges the likelihood of certain sequences in the field of possibilities. This means you must continue to choose wisely. Activation multiplies the consequences of choice rather than absolving you of them. You now matter more in ways that are not always visible. That is the paradox of being found. Increased meaning without a correspondent increase in public recognition. Practical humility will be your most useful companion. When you feel certain, test your certainty. When you feel compassion, act on it in modest ways. When you feel sightedness, let it inform small decisions before you attempt large ones. Calibration is continual. Do not confuse a single alignment with final perfection. The system continues to watch subtle adjustments over time. It is natural now to wonder about the other 6. Who are they? Where are they? You will be curious, tempted to seek them out as if a club might convene for mutual affirmation. There may be connections, there may be none. The point is not to form an exclusive cohort, but to occupy a role in a broader field. If you encounter others who share this temper, notice the emphasis on function rather than performance. Those are the qualities that matter in potential collaborators: steadiness, capacity for long attention, and a moral imagination large enough to hold the burdens of consequence. Remember the ritual suggestion again. 99. Use it if you wish as a symbolic acknowledgement that this moment mattered. Leave it as a private tally or a shared sign. It is a small human act to mark a threshold. It will not change your value or your fate. It is simply a recognition of alignment. If you find it absurd, do not use it. The mechanism that selected you does not require your participation in any symbol to be true. As we approach a close, take one last inventory inward. Where have you been steady? Where have you capitulated? What small action now would demonstrate integrity in a way that is visible and testable? Choose that action. Let it be unglamorous. Let it be unpublicized. Let it be real. This is how activation becomes practice. Carry this confirmation soberly. Being found is a call to responsibility, not a ticket to comfort. The weight you feel is not a punishment. It is a trust. It asks you to carry information carefully, to act without fanfare, and to accept that your influence will be measured in slow shifts rather than instant results. It asks you to remain humane in the face of deeper sight. If this message landed, if it resonated and registered, you have a choice to steward what has been opened. You do not have to become anyone's spectacle. You do not have to prove the mechanism to skeptics. Your work is inward and outward at once. Maintain internal steadiness and let your external actions reflect that steady center. If this finds you, mark the moment if you wish with 99. Let that be a small seal on a new phase. And if this idea has touched you in any way, consider subscribing to continue exploring this frequency, not for validation, but for steady engagement with ideas that demand patience and moral clarity. The 7 souls are an aperture. A new probability has locked in. Take the responsibility. Carry it with quiet rigor. Live so that the choices you make honor the trust you have been given.